Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Lance. Although still in emergency medicine training, Dr Brittney Wicksteed is shaping up to be a key rural health leader in her home state of Western Australia. A country kid at heart, it was her journey through medical school that really helped her realise that rural medicine was where she belongs. She says practising rurally offers the perfect work-life balance and broader training than she'd receive in a big city. Dr Wicksteed begins by describing her early years and the path she then trod to Nicole Goodman.
I would say I definitely identify as a country kid. I grew up kind of split between two places, born in Kalgoorlie and lived for most of my primary school years in a small town called Quindanning, where my parents ran a pub and a small farm before moving back to Kalgoorlie. I was very fortunate to be able to go to boarding school in year 11 and 12 in Perth, which I think really assisted me getting into medicine. And I definitely thought coming from the country and reaching the lofty heights of university that I would want to stay in the city, but quite quickly realised I'm much better suited in the country, and there's so many benefits there throughout my years of university and since finishing uni as well. So definitely a country kid, and will remain a country kid, I think.
No one in your family has a medical background. So what was your aha moment where you thought medicine might be the career for you?
You're right, and then I didn't have any medical type mentors, but I think I was very fortunate to have a family who recognised I had some academic potential quite young and kind of pushed me towards thinking, you know, you've got the mark, so perhaps you should pursue something like law or medicine down the track. And I was definitely a little bit conflicted when I was in high school, not quite sure what I wanted to do. But having done some politics and law subjects and then mock trials, I quickly realised that sitting in an office looking at paperwork all day wouldn't be for me, and medicine probably was the more sensible approach. It really combines my love of people and solving problems and being helpful. So I think my future was probably shaped a little bit for me by the people in my family who always encouraged me to try my hardest at school and have some really high goals. But it was pretty apparent pretty early on, once I started studying health sciences at university, that's where my passion really did lie, because it's this beautiful mix of art and science and people skills of problem solving and helping people along the way. And there's just endless things to learn in this career. So I think I've chosen quite well. Yeah.
Tell me, was there anything that you wanted to do prior to being steered towards medicine that you were really passionate about?
When I was small, I always wanted to be a vet. I really loved animals, and being around animals on the farm, of course, had that kind of more realistic exposure rather than just having a pet cat or pet dog. And certainly the gory stuff never really freaked me out, so that puts me in good stead for a medical career. And growing up, we had horses and things, so I always toyed with the idea of horse riding related careers. But I think I'd always had a pretty straight head on my shoulders in terms of a career. I wasn't one as a kid who wanted to be a ballerina or an astronaut. It was always a realistic type career, and I'm very glad that I've chosen how I did.
You've chosen in particular emergency medicine, and you knew that that was the pathway for you. How did you know? What is it about emergency medicine that drew you to it?
I think everyone has a bit of a different idea of what being a doctor means. And I think you sit with that as you go through medical school and you imagine your future, thinking, what kind of doctor do I want to be? And what does being a doctor mean to me? And I think perhaps in people who come from medical families, and if they have non-GP specialist parents, and they might imagine that that kind of specialty lifestyle is for them. But I didn't really have anything to guide me, so I had probably quite a crude idea of what a doctor would do, which would be helpful in a scenario, be able to do lots of cool stuff and know lots of things about lots of different medical problems. And ED certainly ticks all of those boxes. I had a good feeling about ED even from very early on in medical school, and I tried to keep an open mind and not pigeonhole myself too early into a career, having an open mind towards the other pathways in medicine. And I think what probably really sealed the deal for me was all of the wonderful mentors I had, particularly in medical school. So I was quite fortunate to have a scholarship which led me to going to Kununurra a couple of times throughout my uni degree, as well as shadowing a rural generalist down in Augusta and then doing rural clinical school in Broome. And what really struck me about the rural generalists is that in any situation, they knew exactly what to do. They were amazing with the patients, amazing with their knowledge of medicine and how they applied it. And they also just had a real love for their job and a love for their life and a really good work-life balance. So it's not just been the interest in medicine that's led me towards ED. It probably is a mixture of that and seeing that a work-life balance is possible and that you can do your job without being horribly, horribly burnt out by it, and then have your life on the side. And having that kind of front of mind has always been really important for me. So yeah, I'm very grateful to those early mentors who showed me that work-life balance is super important and it should be prioritised above your career on its own.
What challenges have you faced as you've pursued your fellowship? Did undertaking a portion of your training rurally actually help or compound these challenges, do you think?
I think everyone pursuing any type of career within medicine are going to have their challenges, and some of those can be related to the training itself. Certainly sitting my primary exams, which I've already finished with, were quite hard, and it was a big sacrifice to just be working and studying for months and months on end. And I think you're always going to have challenges in settling into new departments and figuring out the people who you're surrounded with and how you fit into the big picture of things. And I think having a rural background and having worked rurally really helped for that, because I've managed to go to several different hospitals and work in several different departments. And I've always found a way to fit in amongst the very, very friendly rural doctors. And I think being able to get to know your colleagues who might be more senior than you makes you feel really comfortable at work, and being able to come to bigger departments and have some confidence in your place in that team and your deservedness to be there as a doctor is really helpful. And it just helps with your interactions and also with your staff, but also with your patients as well.
Yeah, it really is that opportunity that you get within the smaller, more rural hospitals that you might not get in an urban setting.
Absolutely. I've definitely found working in rural places has given me a breadth of skills that I would never have gotten in the city. Particularly, one thing I've really noticed is working in a tertiary ED now as a more junior registrar, getting involved with things, particularly airway skills, for example. I'm quite happy and a little bit more confident than some of my peers to jump in, because previously in rural rotations, when I've done, say, a surgical term, I've had the opportunity to do things on the anaesthetic side as well. So there's all these little tiny incremental skills that you gather that might not be directly related to the job that you're doing at the time. But you're surrounded by such keen teachers. You get all of this hands-on experience that just pays off in spades once you get back to a tertiary centre where there's a little bit more competition for things, just by nature of there being a lot more trainees. And that applies to a whole cache of different skills, and not necessarily just the skills themselves, but the approach to having a need to do something that is in the patient's best interests that you maybe haven't done before or done for a while, and how you troubleshoot that and carry out that skill in a really safe way without having to just automatically turf every single patient via RFDS to Perth, which might not be in their best interest nor their wishes. So it's this real dynamic approach to medicine that's problem solving, not just at the patient level, but at a broader systems level, that you really get that experience in rural. And I've definitely had supervisors say to me, it's quite obvious that you've worked in the country, because you look beyond just the patient with their single problem in front of you and at the greater context. And it gives you a bit of experience in logistical planning, probably a really realistic sense of what can and can't be done, and the ability to practice common sense, which I think in bigger and bigger centres with a more medical legal context, common sense can be a little bit hard to use and come by as well. And working in resource limited situations, it gives you a perspective and a clinical skill set that is not as easy to develop somewhere where you have 24/7 imaging, bloods and access to subspecialty care.
With that said, Britt, what are you enjoying most then about your training right now?
I am very lucky to absolutely love what I do for work. And I don't think everyone in medicine is quite as lucky to really be passionate about something and have their passion for work align with their ideal work-life balance. At the moment, we are based in Perth, which definitely has its advantages and disadvantages across work and home life. I'm really enjoying gaining the experience from a tertiary hospital because I think it's really helpful to see how things happen in a really busy place with the subspecialty input, and they can certainly teach you a lot that you can transfer to your practice when you don't have them on hand and just have them at the end of the phone. And the patient's acuity is really high, so it's really great to be able to go to work and learn so much from every single patient, whether that's from a medical perspective or how to best link them up with the more social, psychosocial support kind of things. Every patient really presents a learning opportunity. They come with something very simple that you know how to manage. It might be the more soft skills on how to best reassure them or how to recognise the other factors that are probably contributing to the illness that you might be able to impact on. And the benefit of working in a bigger place is that you have many, many different mentors to pick and choose your future practice from, and many, many different approaches. So I think that's really important, and I really do feel strongly that it's important to work, if your situation allows, in a number of different centres that you can see the good and the bad and the mediocre, and you can pick the best bits and take them then back where you want to live and stay and become really entrenched in the community. And it's just so much fun being a trainee. You know, I get to go to work and be prioritised to do this cool stuff every day, and just solidifying my clinical skill set and my kind of more soft skills, communication in particular. And it's just a lot of fun. My colleagues are great, and every placement I complete is just another step towards us going back to Albany, which is where we're quite keen to put roots down. And I'm looking forward to not having to think about the next move and just be able to settle.
I want to know a bit more about the benefits of kind of living and working rurally. I know you're in Perth now, but tell us a bit more about, personally, the benefits of being rural.
Many who know me know I'm a very passionate advocate for working rurally, mostly for the work-life balance. The work is fantastic, and it depends where you work. There's many different points of interest. And, for example, working in the Kimberley, I had the pleasure of looking after lots of Aboriginal patients from the region and learning a lot more about their culture, their knowledges and beliefs around healthcare, and how we can kind of marry up that more traditional belief around healthcare with the more westernised approach. And I think being able to see where people come from really helps when you're managing them in a different context, like if you are in the city or if they're in a different part of WA, knowing where they're from, what resources people have access to, and whether they live at the end of a dirt road that gets very, very wet in the wet season. Helpful. And I think beyond that, in a more lifestyle sense, it's kind of like a bit of a working holiday, because each of the regions we have has so much to offer. When we lived in the Kimberley, we got to do a lot of bucket list items that people might never ever get the opportunity to do, like go on the Gibb River Road, up to the Mitchell Plateau, Lake Argyle, a helicopter over the Bungle Bungles, lots of very varied, fun and diverse experiences. And beyond the kind of holiday side of things, I think it's just simple living, you know, being able to just hop in the car and you're at work within 5 minutes, you find a park within a minute and you walk into the hospital where you know everybody by name and who greets you with a smile, and then being able to finish work at the end of the day, head straight home and have all that extra time to actually spend time in nature, go for walks on the beach, go for a hike, see your friends who live just down the road. It's just a really rich social life and home life. And you actually have time for all the little things. Like if you want to spend 3 hours on the weekend making sourdough, you can. You're not having to drive an hour across Perth to catch up with a friend that you organised 4 months ago because you're both so busy with your various jobs and commute times. And it really fosters good connection, I think. When we've lived in smaller communities, we have quite a tight circle of friends, and we actually spend time not just catching up and talking about what we've been up to, but actually making new memories together, which I think is becoming more and more rare as I get a little bit older and everyone is proper adult now with their own jobs and families and careers. And I just think, why wouldn't you? Plus, it's heaps cheaper to live rurally. The housing prices certainly are more attractive. So I think it's a bit of a no-brainer.
You mentioned that you've had some really strong mentorship and guidance along your journey, but is there advice that you wish you were given as an intern or junior doctor that you haven't received?
I honestly think I had the best advice I could have hoped for from my mentors that I've had during medical school and during my career so far, particularly rurally. And this is the advice that I like to pass on to everybody who will listen. The bones of the advice that I've been given by multiple different mentors who are very happy people is that work is ultimately just a job, but you may as well enjoy it if you can. So home life is really important, and having a community around you and a support network, that is far more important than working your way up through the career ladder. And one piece of advice, which was echoed from multiple different rural mentors, but I never once heard from anybody in the city, is to plan time off. And I've always been a very big believer in a 5-year plan. And I think it's really important that at least every 5 years you're taking at least a couple of months, if not longer, off to actually enjoy the spoils of all of your hard work and just reconnect to who you are outside of a clinician. It's very easy for medicine to become your entire identity. And for some people, that's what they want, and that's fine. But there's so much more to life than waking up and driving to work and being at work and then driving home and going to bed again. And medicine is a really hard career, and there are high rates of burnout. So I think people need to really factor that in to their career and look after themselves and pass that on to their more junior staff when they work their way up through the career ladder as well.
I think the need to plan your holidays and take some time off is definitely wise, particularly because you are quite a busy person, Britt. You were the founding president of the Junior Medical Officers of the Great Southern in 2020 and founding president of the Kimberley in 2021, as well as doing everything else that you're doing, studying and working and so on. But tell us what motivated you to establish junior doctor societies in regional WA.
I think for many years I've always been part of committees and things I've been involved in. So I think it's really important to engage in issues that matter to you. And starting out as a junior doctor, of course, there are similar junior doctor societies at the various big hospitals in Perth. And I was peripherally aware of them and the benefits that they had for the juniors at those sites. And then moving out to Albany and starting work, I just came across a lot of issues that, while were maybe small, were still quite impactful on the junior doctor experience. And I really strongly believe that hospitals need to curate the best possible experience for their junior doctors if they want a strong workforce in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years' time. And what they do now really matters. And I love Albany and I love Albany Hospital. So I really felt quite passionate about creating the best experience and fixing all of those just little hiccups or little things that had maybe been set in motion by people who didn't really understand the on-flow effects. And I also really think if you are going to complain about something, then you might as well be part of the solution and do something about it. So I gently peer pressured some of my friends and colleagues to join in with me, because I think coming to something like the executive team of a hospital, it's better to have power in numbers and represent a body of people rather than just being one person who's always knocking on the door saying, hey, I think you could change this. And we had lots of other aims which I think still continue to be achieved besides the advocacy in the workplace, the industrial relation side of things, which is really just building a community and letting the people who come down on short rotations have a really rich experience in and outside of the hospital so that they can then come back and say, that was a really positive experience. I'm open to doing more rural things, or I'm definitely going to tell my friends that it's a worthwhile thing to do. And I think it helped a little bit being during COVID. There was maybe a little bit more free time than there is these days. I think it's a really worthwhile way to spend time, and beyond just the benefits of what we achieve for the junior doctors at the hospital, I think knowing the system that you work in and knowing how to influence it and change it is really important. And they don't really teach you that at medical school. So it gave me a really great opportunity to understand a little bit more how the hospital system works and how the machine runs and how to influence change without just feeling like you're not getting anywhere. So it really just snowballed from a desire to make things better. And then when we got to Broome, I'm like, it would really benefit the hospital to have, and the junior doctors as well, to have something similar. So we kind of replicated it there at the same time that it was happening across the state. And now there's quite a strong network of junior doctor societies. But definitely starting that in Albany is probably one of my greatest achievements and things that I look back on with quite a lot of pride, I guess, because it's still going strong to this day, and it provides leadership for junior doctors and supports them on this journey to be leaders in health. And I wish more people would get riled up enough to join their local society or get involved in things like the AMA or other bodies that can influence change, because at the end of the day, it is our jobs where we go every day. So why not make them the job that we want to be and look the way we want to look and have some influence and say in what happens in our daily lives.
You are also the founder and chair of Western Australian Rural Doctors in Training, or WARDIT. This provides advocacy on a range of issues related to the junior doctor experience in rural WA at a state and national level. What are rurally based junior doctors missing out on if they don't connect with either their local JMO society or WARDIT while training rurally?
The reason I started WARDIT was to try and bring together the leaders of the various societies, because the regions are very, very different and they have different issues, but there are still common threads and very common levers that have capacity to change the situation in all the places. You know, everyone has a similar or the same employer, and factors that affect junior doctors are broadly quite similar across different health sites. So I think it's really important that rural has a voice, and particularly rural WA is really left out. Having been involved in some things at a national level, you know, the eastern states often forget WA even exists, much less that we have our own separate issues. And each state has a very different structure to their hospital systems and how things work. So I think it's really hard to be across the issues if people don't talk about them and aren't engaged in them. And it's like any workplace. You're always going to go to work and think this could be better, but you might not have the power or the influence or the knowledge on how to do that. So unless people are completely happy with everything related to their work and they feel like they've got a community, you know, go for them. They probably don't need that much input from something like a local society or getting engaged in the larger bodies. But I think the majority would have an experience where they would like to see something improved, if not for them, then the people coming ahead of them. So I think it is really worthwhile for people to get involved in these causes, if not for themselves and for the future generations of junior doctors coming through. And beyond that, they'll probably make some new friends. They'll probably find a new running club or book club or, you know, weekly trip to the pub or the dog park with a bunch of people who have a lot of things in common. And I think connection is just so key in our career. It can be really difficult at times and it can feel really lonely sometimes. So I think being able to connect with people who have a common shared experience with you is just so important. And networking helps as well. I mean, it's a very small community, so even if you're not working in the place where you might wish to end up, you're going to know someone who's probably going to be important in your career steps in the future. So I think there's just so many benefits.
Now, I mentioned that you were busy, and you really are, because on top of all of this, you're Vice President of the Rural Doctors Association of WA, which advocates to improve conditions for rural doctors. Was there a particular issue that motivated you to get involved with this association?
My involvement with RDAWA really was probably being in the right place at the right time, and it was another fantastic mentor tapping me on the shoulder and saying, I think it'd be really great to jump on this committee. And it's been baby steps in knowing where the issues are, where the pressure points are, where the levers of change are, and just how much change you can affect, especially with the larger organisations. So I don't think there was a specific issue, but then getting involved with it, I kind of carried on my passion with rural training and junior doctors' experiences in rural. That led me to some really awesome places. And I think people just should say yes to these kind of opportunities, because through that initial role where I was, I think, a junior doctor representative, I was president for a couple of years. I was on the board for the Rural Doctors Association of WA. That led me to doing my company director course training and going to Canberra several times, being on a panel at Parliament House addressing politicians, just all these amazing things where I would just pinch myself and just go, what is a kid from Kalgoorlie doing here in Parliament House in Canberra? And I think when you're with a group of people who are similarly passionate, your passion just expands and grows, and you really feed off of each other's energy, because it can be quite hard to do things on your own. So just being surrounded by really engaged doctors who love advocacy and love solving problems and looking at things with a different lens, it's really fulfilling, and it really does help fuel the fire to keep on fighting the good fight.
Britt, you've hinted a little bit at it, but what's next for you? What does the future look like for Brittney?
Well, as I said, I always have a bit of a 5 to 10 year plan, which I do get teased about by some of my friends. But I think it's important to know where you're going next. So I've got one beautiful little girl, Matilda, who is 10 months old. So we'll probably look to start expanding our family over the coming years. And I really feel strongly that in medicine you can move with your job, so you probably should if you can, because there's lots of fun places to discover. But the next move will probably be to Hobart for a short period of time, so we can eat some oysters and drink some wine and enjoy the beautiful Tasmanian sights. And then my great hope is that we can go back to Albany and, really put our roots down, find somewhere lovely to live, pursue that, very ubiquitous dream of owning some property, which feels increasingly impossible with this current climate of cost of living crisis. And I hope that when I'm in Albany, I'll be able to work in the emergency department, obviously, but I'd love to get involved in some more systems change things, whether that's within the hospital or through some other organisations, and affect change that's more than just an individual patient-to-patient interaction, but something more sweeping that impacts on patients or healthcare staff or hospitals or regions more broadly. So I'm not quite sure what that will look like yet, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens along the way.
Dr Brittney Wicksteed, an emergency medicine trainee based in Perth. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.